why Paul said that Jesus condemned sin in the flesh that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us. Notice he didn't say that the law might be filled in us. He said the righteousness of the law, which means the law itself fell short of fully declaring what righteousness really was. In other words, when he puts the law in our heart, we actually want to go beyond just what we see are the ordinances under the law. We find ourselves wanting to do more than even that.
That's it.
That's right. He answers the question about lawlessness by saying, shall we sin that grace may abound? That's the answer to that.
That's right. God
may
forbid.
It never be.
And he does forbid it. So, all right, well, it's even King Solomon in his prayer referred back to this time. He said, blessed be the Lord that hath given rest unto his people Israel. In other words, they were at a time when they had entered in. And in Solomon's reign, there was peace with the heathen, and David had conquered a great many of the peoples. He said, had given rest unto his people according to all that he promised. There hath not failed one word of all his good promise, which he promised by the hand of Moses, his servant. So there was a testimony that God said what he was going to do, and in all of Israel, the ones who knew what God had said, this was their testimony. Everything God said, every word has been done. He's brought it to pass. So there is a knowledge of God's working. Sure.
No one's mentioned this yet, but we want to remember that when God brought them in, his power enabled them to cross the flooded Jordan River.
Yes.
And then the first city, they did not have to raise a sword. In the first city, now, they did participate in that. They had to walk across. They had to walk around Jericho. And eventually they fought. But not at the first. Not at the first. Even as when we first come in, we hardly do a thing.
That's right.
But we are expected to do certain things. He calls us eventually to engage this more fully. The further we go, the more fully we engage it.
The more we see, the more reason we have to be.
And the more we are able.
That's right. So God is very gentle with us. I mean, God could have just, without any examples, without any instruction, just given us, not called a people out of the earth, just given a general saying to Adam and Eve and had them repeat it from generation to generation, not done any of these other works, and just said, now I'm going to redeem you. Not given the priesthood, not given the law, not done anything to help our understanding. How could we have, what could we have held on to? I mean, we would have been, we can't imagine these things. They're too high, they're too lofty. But God was gentle. And even though some of these things appeared hard, they were necessary for our understanding and for us to see properly so that we could identify what God was doing and that he can be trusted. Brother G?
That makes me think of those who preach a gospel that says you can't do anything.
Yes.
You can't do anything. Well, what can the people get a hold of then?
All right, well, gospel means good news. What, is there a word that means bad news? Because that's what that is.
What Brother Dean said a minute ago sheds a lot of light on who must increase, I must decrease.
Yes.
You know, it really is a proportion, because as he increases, the natural result, it's not like it's a choice, it's naturally tied to more involvement.
That's right. That's right. Good observation. It says, for ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. Now, brethren, that is actually receiving the promise, to be more convinced. Whenever the brethren bring these different aspects of what God has committed himself to, what he has told us plainly, and I tell you, the biggest hurdle that any of us will face will be believing that God will keep you and present you faultless. Can you imagine yourself at the throne? Can you imagine yourself there? This is a good exercise. I do it a lot. What will my heart appear like? There is, just like there are days of the week that come, we're taught by time that events have their natural course and that there is a conclusion and that they will come to pass if God gives time. All right? If we live another day, we will be another day older. If, God gives time and we live, then there'll be certain events that we've planned that will eventually get here. And we will do certain things as a result. Well, we do have an appointment. Yeah. And it will come to pass. Now, see, you have to believe this. Yes. God has said, God has told us that it is appointed unto man once to die. And after that, the judgment. In other words, he's going to make a pronouncement of the things that we've done here. He's going to sum it up for us. And we will stand before him. This is not going to happen to where you're not. When you get to eternity, you're going to remember this. Yeah. That it was said, I'm going to be here. It's like you're not going to just enter in and then all of a sudden just know everything, and the judgment be passed. You're going to be waiting for God to pronounce for you, well done, or depart from me, good and faithful servant, or I never knew you. Yeah. Yeah. You're going to be waiting for those words. Now, a person that doesn't believe that, they're not going to live in anticipation of that time. Temptation will come, and you'll be tempted to think, well, God will wink at this. This is not a big deal. Or you just will set it aside, the consideration altogether, and just follow the pleasure that you think you're going to achieve by entering into that. You're just going to forget that God has any thought about what you're doing, what you're thinking, where you're going, what you're wearing, anything. All of those things that men can tritely say, oh, well, God doesn't care about that. Well, nobody's going to say that when they're standing before the throne. Amen. And there's a sense where we will be presented collectively, where Jesus will say, I and the children which you have given me. But there's another sense, brethren, where every single one of us will have to hear our name confessed before the Father and before the holy angels, where Jesus is going to have to say, you are mine. This one is mine, Father. And then the Lord will say, welcome. But if Jesus doesn't say that, well, you talk about part of that weeping and gnashing of teeth in hell. You think people that go to hell aren't going to remember for eternity every single time, every step that took them there, every time they turned their face from God, every time they neglected or disbelieved what God said? These promises are designed. See, God has